Ever feel like the world of DNA and AI is this giant puzzle that's just out of reach?
Yeah, like trying to learn a language, but it's got billions of letters instead of words.
Right. And you're just looking for that instruction manual.
Exactly.
Well, today we're diving deep into how researchers are making AI and genomics not just powerful, but understandable too.
It's really about bringing those insights into focus,
Mm.
making sure what we're seeing is actually meaningful and not just random noise.
And for this deep dive, we're checking out this paper, Designing Interpretable Deep Learning Applications in Functional Genomics.
The catchy title, right?
Definitely grabs your attention. But they've actually uncovered some really cool stuff, like using AI to potentially find patterns in our genes that could point to diseases like Alzheimer's.
It's really remarkable how AI is being used in this field now.
It is. But before we get lost in the excitement,
Hmm.
we should probably talk about what interpretability actually means in this context.
Yeah, it's a good point because it's one thing to have an AI that can analyze mountains of genomic data, but it's another thing entirely to actually understand how it's connecting the dots.
Right. It's like going to the doctor and them just giving you a diagnosis with zero explanation.
Exactly. And you wouldn't just trust that, right? You want to know the why behind it.
Exactly. And in genomics, that's even more important because the information is so complex.
Mhm.
We're talking about your genes, how active they are, even how their expression is controlled. We really need to be sure these AI models are giving us real insights, not just random correlations.
Absolutely. We need to be able to trust the AI's judgment.
And that's where understanding the different types of genomic data comes in.
Yeah.
This paper dives into genetics, transcriptomics, epigenetics.
Bit of a mouthful, I know.
It is. But think of it like this. Your genome, all your DNA, is like this massive library filled with instruction manuals for your body.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So genetics is like looking at the actual words printed on those pages, the raw DNA sequence.
Makes sense.
Then transcriptomics, that's about figuring out which manuals are actually being read at any given time, which genes are turned on.
So, like, which instructions are actually being used?
Exactly. And then epigenetics, that's like the bookmarks and highlighted sections in those manuals.
Hmm.
They influence how those instructions are interpreted and used by your cells.
So it's adding another layer of complexity on top of an already complex system.
Exactly. And just to give you an idea of the scale, imagine trying to analyze a library with millions of books and trillions of words.
That's a lot of data to sift through.
It is. That's what these AI models are dealing with.
Oh, no wonder it's so challenging to make them interpretable.
Right. And what's interesting is the paper actually found that even with all the excitement around single-cell sequencing, which gives us such a detailed look at individual cells, most of these interpretable models still mainly use bulk sequencing data.
So they're sticking with the bulk data, huh?
Yeah, 81% compared to just 19% using single-cell data.
That makes you wonder if there's a trade-off happening there. Like, are we sacrificing some of that single-cell detail for the sake of interpretability?
That's a really good question. And it highlights why choosing the right AI model is so important in the first place. It's not just about the data, but how we can actually make sense of it.
It's like choosing the right tool from the toolbox. You wouldn't use a hammer to fix a watch.
Exactly. And in this field, there's a whole toolbox of different deep learning models to choose from. Because it's not enough to just throw any old AI at this mountain of genomic data.
It's kind of like you wouldn't use a hammer to fix a watch, right?
You need the right tool for the job.
And in this field, there's a whole toolbox of different deep learning models to choose from.
Right. The paper mentions a bunch of them. MLPs, CNNs, GNNs,
Yeah.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
And just like a good mechanic knows which wrench to reach, for researchers have to carefully consider which model is best suited to the specific type of genomic data and the questions they're trying to answer.
And what's really fascinating is that some of these models are specifically designed for interpretability. Like they're built from the ground up to be more transparent than your typical black box AI.
That's a big difference, isn't it?
It is. The paper highlighted visible neural networks, or VNNs.
They're super interesting because they actually incorporate biological knowledge directly into their structure.
It's kind of like designing a skyscraper, where the blueprints are based on the laws of physics.
So instead of just crunching numbers blindly, these VNNs are designed to take into account things like how genes interact with each other or how different biological pathways are connected. It's pretty amazing, right?
It is. And because they're built with this biological context in mind, they're able to handle those massive data sets. We were talking about millions of genetic variants while remaining surprisingly efficient.
They're like the super-powered computers of the genomics world.
It's like we're not just getting an answer from these AI models, we're getting a guided tour of their thought process.
But even with a clear view inside, how do we actually interpret what we're seeing? Because the paper also mentions these different dimensions of interpretability.
It's true, just like a city can be explored at different levels, street view, a bird's eye view from a skyscraper, or maybe even zooming out to a satellite image, understanding AI in genomics requires the same multidimensional approach.
The researchers break it down into three key aspects.
Okay, tell us about those.
First, there's the question of whether you need to actually change the AI's structure to get explanations, or if you can apply certain methods after the fact.
So is it like a built-in feature or something you add on later?
Exactly. Then there's the type of explanation you're looking for. Are you trying to extract simple rules, uncover hidden patterns, or something else entirely?
That's a big range of possibilities.
And finally, there's the level of detail. Are you interested in the whole system, a specific group of genes, or just a single individual's genetic makeup?
So depending on the research question, you might need to adjust your focus and your tools. But it's not just about picking the right lens for interpretation.
The researchers also emphasize that relying on just one method might not give you the full picture.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
They suggest using multiple approaches and really putting the AI's findings through rigorous testing to make sure you're getting a complete and accurate understanding.
It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle. You wouldn't just look at one piece and think you've figured out the whole image right. You need to look for those connecting edges, the patterns, and sometimes even flip pieces over to see if they fit from a different angle.
Exactly. And just like with a complex puzzle, even with the best tools and techniques, there's always a chance you might be missing something.
The paper actually spends a good amount of time talking about uncertainty in deep learning predictions.
And this is where it gets really important, especially when you're talking about using AI in healthcare.
Because as powerful as these models are, they're not perfect. They're still learning and evolving.
It's like you might trust your GPS navigation app to get you home, but you'd probably be a lot more cautious if it told you to drive off a cliff. Knowing how confident the AI is in its prediction is crucial.
So it's about knowing if the AI is giving us a sure thing or just a maybe.
Exactly. It's like you'd feel a lot more comfortable with a diagnosis if the doctor said, I'm 99% certain this is what's going on, rather than, well, it could be this or it could be something else entirely.
Right. It's about moving beyond that simple yes or no answer and really understanding the nuances of what the AI is telling us. And this whole idea of uncertainty is something that researchers are actively working on.
Oh, absolutely. They're developing new methods to quantify and visualize that uncertainty so we can make more informed decisions based on the AI's insights.
That makes me think about the future of this field. It seems like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with interpretable AI in genomics. What are some of the most exciting developments on the horizon?
Well, one really cool trend is that researchers are starting to borrow techniques from other areas of AI, like image recognition or natural language processing, and adapt them for genomics.
So they're taking inspiration from other fields.
Exactly. It's like if you've already figured out how to teach an AI to recognize a cat in a photo, maybe you can use some of those same principles to help it identify meaningful patterns in DNA sequences.
So it's all about finding those creative connections.
Exactly. And it's not just a one-way street either. Genomics is actually pushing the boundaries of AI interpretability as well.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, remember those VNNs we talked about, the ones specifically designed for genomic data? Those are a prime example of how this field is driving innovation in AI more broadly.
It's incredible to think that by trying to unlock the secrets of our own biology, we're also pushing the limits of what AI can do and how well we can understand it.
It's pretty amazing, and it's definitely a field to watch in the coming years.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up our deep dive today, I think it's important to remember that this isn't just some abstract scientific pursuit. The implications of interpretable AI in genomics are potentially huge, especially when you think about things like personalized medicine.
Imagine a future where doctors can use AI to analyze your unique genetic makeup and predict your risk for certain diseases or even tailor treatments to your specific needs. It could revolutionize healthcare as we know it.
It's like we're on the verge of this incredible new chapter in medicine, and AI is helping us understand the language of our own DNA.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners today will be the one to make the next big breakthrough in this field.
Now that's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of interpretable AI in genomics. Until next time.